Right, so when doing the plug exploded view casting thing, I ended up breaking my Xacto blade because I was pushing too hard and it was too cold and the plastic decided to give way. So what we need to do is, rather than just make this bit, we're going to make a really fancy one. Right, so first things first, because it's going to take the longest, is we're going to get the handle all glued up. To make the handle, we're going to use some of this oak with stripes of this wood in it. If anybody knows what it is, please comment below, because I'd really like to know. For the shaft, for this bit, we're going to mill it out of some of this aluminium, solid bar, and then the inside bit in here has got a thread in it. So we're going to use this is called a riv nut, and it's got a thread in there for putting through a hole of sheet metal, and then it gives you a ability to screw a bolt to it. But we're going to resin one inside the piece of wood when we're done, and then that way the aluminium one of these will be able to go in here, screw in, and it will clamp the blade. And this time. Right, so when researching how to make this a little bit more interesting than just a turned piece of wood, I came across a way of putting like a funny Celtic knot thing inside, like a rolling pin, because it's still a round thing. So we're going to try and do it with this. And one of the things everybody seemed to have was a really massive jig for their table saw, and I made my own, but it's a little bit simpler than what anybody else uses on the internet. So this goes in here. Unfortunately, theirs will work for every piece. This only works for this one. But it's just the angle I want the saw to go through, and a way of holding a piece of wood. And the piece of wood is reasonably square, so it can flip over into any orientation in here. And then we push this through, and it will cut 99% of the way through, so it doesn't completely disattach. And then we can put one of these in the line, like this. That should be fine. It's really blunt, so it's going to burn a bit. But there's not much I can do about that, because I don't have any more spare blades. So, start at 1. See how it goes. Quite blunt. And then hopefully this is not thin enough to go in that gap. Okay, so we need to make this a little bit thinner before we can slot it in. I cut a piece of wood, I put it in the gap, and I super glued it in really messily. And we're just waiting for the super glue off, but I hit record and turned off recording and then didn't hit it go again. So what we'll do next is we're going to trim these extra bits off, and then we'll do another one of these cuts on another side. Right, time to smoke our way through this again. So we did number 1, and now we're going to do number 2. It's going to go this way. you recording at all? You are, yes. Cool. Right, we're going to stick glue in here. I'll put this on last. This is where a thinner super glue would be better. But that is a project for another day. Right. That way's better. Oops, decided to split it. So, the answer to the splitting, I cut it too thin and then put a wedge in too big, is to clamp it. More. It's still kind of attached where it should be. And then, where's the other one? This one. Right, I know I jested to myself about having these numbers on the end. They're actually really helpful. Right, let's burn through this again. This one. It's all super glued in, and we're going to have a good cure now. So I'm going to go and have a cup of tea and let the smoke clear out the room, and then we'll turn it down into one of these, hopefully. Okay, so this is all dry now. I've taken some of the extra bits off, and I was going to put this in a lathe. I'm a little concerned where I've used super glue that if I catch it, it's going to shatter apart. And so because I'm not trying to remove masses of material, like this is pretty close to the size I want it, I'm actually just going to do it on a sander, and with a planer take the corners off, and then with a sander make the size of the thing I want. Is that big enough? Alright, so I made the little angly things to hold it in the vise. And this way I should be able to do some planing without having to worry about hitting the vise or the piece moving. So, let's give it a go. Right, so we've taken off the corners, and you can see we're starting to get our pattern to show up. So, we're going to do the rest on the sander. Get a reasonably thick piece of ply and drill the size hole of the thing you want in it. And go on the other side, minimise flux. There we go. And that way, when this goes through this hole, it's the right size. No, you can see. Right, so this now goes through the round hole. It might not be perfectly round. Oh, yeah. But it does go through. So it's probably a little bit shy of that 19mm. But now we just need to sand it better with sandpaper of Venus. Now time to polish my wood. 80. So we're at the stage now where we're starting to do the final sanding, but you can see there's a couple of little gaps in here and here and stuff I want to fill. So we're just going to fill it straight up with super glue. There we go. Just give that a couple of seconds to go off. And then you just got a couple of little hard lumps to sand down or scrape off with a knife. We're going to do the scraping with a knife technique. Right, and so after much faff and breaking a few parts, we have the handle and the blade holder. And now all we've got to do is kind of merge them together a bit. And this is a little long, this is giving me extra room either side, so we're going to cut this somewhere around here, then insert this, and then we'll do something with the back so that, but once I find out how comfortable it fits in my hand. Okay, so I don't want this riv nut part to be drilled into the design, so it has to be at least there. And ideally I want a little bit of space from it, so we're going to give it half an inch, and then the top of it, the top inside rim from that mark is there. So that's where we're going to cut. So this is where we leave the video if this doesn't go well. We've got I think an 8mm drill bit, which isn't big enough, but it will do for now. And we're just going to eye the middle up with a little circle in there like that, so that's pretty close. You want to use a brad pointed bit for this because you're drilling into end grain. And we're going to go really slowly and not try and put any sideways pressure on this. is nowhere near big enough. But it has removed a lot of material out of the way. So we need an 11mm hole, but we're going to take it out slowly because these drills work slightly differently. Just to check that this isn't a turn. No. And then last one. Yeah. Okay. So pretty close to the middle, not quite straight, but this should fit in here now. And now we have a knife. Now we've got the hole. We need to make this rough so that when we glue it in, it's actually going to stick in there. So we're just going to have everything together and put it in the vise and the soft grips. And then we're just going to go a little bit carelessly, with a file. And we're just going to use the corner of the file to rough up the outside of this grip nut, and this will give the glue something to key into. And we're just going to use super glue because it's the easiest way to do it. So we now have a rough bit of texture. And now we need to find the super glue. So this is all roughed up, this hole's nice and clean, and we're going to super glue. If the glue will come out, super glue like this, quick spray of this inside the hole, and then that hopefully you're on, and then we take the gluey rough thing and shove it into the piece of wood. And then we take this out to ensure that it doesn't stick in. Give that a few seconds to dry, and then we're going to get the sander out and just take off a little bit more hair and somehow make my hands clean. So we're just going to take the wood down to the edge of the aluminium, and that way it will just a gentle slope and it will feel better in our hands. Sanded, or at least mostly sanded. I've still got to shorten the handle. Let's get this in here, like this. So, don't know what happened to the blade. The blade fell out earlier. It's round. But I'm either going to hold it here or hold it here, depending on how delicate the work I'm doing is. So, I don't want to cut it so it doesn't rest on this squidgy part of my hand. So if we squidge it right down and then draw a line across at about there, and if we had a pencil to do the drawing, so that way it's way above there, but if I hold it back up here, then it's not going to fall off the back of my hand. And that should make everything very comfortable. So we're just going to cut this on the bandsaw again. We are ready to put the finish on. And we're going to use some clear beeswax because I like the feel of it in my hand once it's on an object. So, let's go this way. So if you like this sort of thing and you want to see me make and repair more random things, then please remember to subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time.